Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Friday, September 30th, 2022. And our top story today, the Climate Pledge turns 3 and some key takeaways from Climate Week. Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Timothy Giuliani is with the World Wildlife Fund. Tim, so great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Great. It's great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
And we really appreciate you and the World Wildlife Fund stopping by the program this morning. And I want to take a look back and maybe start from a very high view. Talk about Climate Week. And I know you and many others in the asset management, the government, the not-for-profit industry really weighed in at Climate Week. First of all, let's talk about who attended and maybe some key takeaways from the week that was Climate Week.
Yeah, well, it's always quite a week, but it's been a couple of years, obviously, since we actually got to see people in more than two dimensions, right? It was finally a three-dimensional week with really feeling the first event I've been at that really felt like the before times. People together, talking, engaging, and that was in and of itself fantastic. And I think you saw a lot of pent up interest. And so you had, thousands of people there. And really across these two events, the UN General Assembly and then Climate Week, which has been going on since 2009. And as you said, you have governments there, you have NGOs, you have a ton of business. So I'm Director of Corporate Climate Engagement at WWF, so work with the business sector. Many of our partners were there across just dozens and dozens and dozens of events. And I think we ourselves had an event rolling out a small and medium enterprise platform for helping small companies set science-based targets. We also rolled out a new high ambition coalition for a global plastics treaty, both at the government level and the corporate level. So, it really ranged the gamut. And you saw both nature and climate being a huge focus of the week.
Yeah, and again, it's amazing. And look, the virtual world's great. It's great that we can connect with each other, but Zoom. But look, we're creatures that need social interaction, and it's probably nice to. There are ways that we communicate non-verbally. Let me ask you. You mentioned the UN General Assembly, and it almost always coincides with Climate Week. And I know that your focus is really on business partnerships, but how have governments around the world responded to climate initiatives, climate change, net zero requirements, et cetera?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, thinking about, that moment in New York, and Climate Week really started because of the General Assembly. That's the moment every year where you have leaders from across the world coming to speak at the UN. And so, it's one of these moments of the year, similar to Davos and the COP, which we'll talk a little bit about later, I think. Here's the story I would tell. 5 or so years ago, I was at UNGA Climate Week, and I was standing on 6th Avenue. I think, Obama was in town, absolute gridlock. And I watched a fire truck, horns blaring, siren going, trying to turn onto 6th Avenue. I kid you not, for 10 minutes. The road was just completely blocked. And that's almost a metaphor for what's happening around climate, right? The sirens are blaring, the horns are blowing. We know what the problem is, yet the action's not happening fast enough. And that's true both at the individual level. I know I don't do everything that I'm supposed to do. That's happening at the corporate level, and it's happening at the government level. We often hear folks, blame corporates for not doing enough, and we can talk about what corporates are doing, but governments are not there either. And it's, the gap between the pledges that we've seen governments make and what we need to get to 1.5 is pretty considerable. So there is a lot of work yet to be done.
You bring up businesses, and I want to get your that really is your bailiwick. But I want to ask you about what businesses are doing, but also central banks, because you've got the Federal Reserve, you've got central banks, Bank of England, etc. How are these entities all working together to combat climate change or to meet some of these initiatives that you're talking about?
It really varies, right? So again, the common theme of nobody is doing enough. We know that, central banks, you'll often hear, our central bank has, two mandates, keep inflation low and keep unemployment low, right? And right now, we're fighting a battle against inflation. And so you have some folks that say that's all they should do, right? That is their entire focus, and don't take them off their game. And obviously, inflation is bad, and we're seeing the results of that right now. Unemployment is bad as well. But there are, tools that really central banks and everybody can use to drive emissions down and take the focus onto climate change, because there's going to be a massive financial impact, already is, from climate change, right? So the risks over the long term are ones that central banks need to be thinking about. It's something that we launched just recently, the Greening Financial Regulation Initiative, with other NGOs and a number of organizations to try to get central banks and other financial institutions to do everything that they can to address this problem.
Yeah, and that's a perfect transition. Tim, I've got to go to a very quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about what investors, and those are individuals and institutions, can do to impact climate change and have a direct impact on the environment. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Yes, we're on thin ice. And everything is going up in smoke. Our planet is under the weather. But when the going gets tough, the tough get, well, you know. Love it or lose it.
Welcome back. We're talking this morning with Tim Giuliani of the World Wildlife Fund. Tim, thanks so much for staying with us this morning. Well, Tim, thanks so much for sticking around with us this morning. Really appreciate having you for this second segment.
Yeah, absolutely. The traffic isn't bad, so I can stay here in my dining room as long as.
I always get concerned that I'm going to chase people off, but look, this is a really important topic. It's one that, and it's really hard to distill a whole week into one program. So we appreciate you popping by and hitting the high points. And of course, people can certainly go to the WWF website to find more information. It's probably here in the lower third. Let me ask you as a follow-up to our first segment. So we talked about some of the key takeaways. We talked about you called it the UNGA, the UN General Assembly. I'd never heard of that before. You talked about central banks and businesses. Let's talk about investors. What can individuals and institutions, by institutions I mean endowments, foundations, pension plans, SPACs, special purpose acquisition companies, what can they do cumulatively to combat climate change and make an impact?
Well, this is an issue that's going to take trillions of dollars of investment, and there's a massive opportunity there. Yet we also are continuing to pour hundreds of billions of dollars into the oil and gas industry, right? And this is one of the, if not the biggest challenge around climate is how do we fundamentally transform our economy away from fossil fuels, right? We have been talking about, I've been doing this since the mid 2000s, and the story remains the same. The world came together in Paris in 2015 and came up with the Paris Agreement. You have countries that are like the U.S. setting a 50 to 52% goal by 2030. Yet global fossil fuel use is higher now than it was when Paris was signed. And so we need to shift investment away from fossil fuels, right? And obviously that's easier said than done. Public pension funds, which have like $4 trillion under investment, can be part of that solution. Individual banks certainly can. And individuals, role is, I think, as much in terms of looking at where they're investing to making those behavioral shifts, right? Because we can't rely only on central banks, only on financial institutions to make this change, but we all have to be part of this change, right? There's, the economy runs on supply and demand. The supply side is where investment comes in, and the demand side is where individuals and companies with fleets, et cetera, come in. So it has to be from top down and from the bottom up.
Let me ask you about transparency, Tim, because this is, anytime you're an investor, you're looking at a particular security, whether stock, bond, you want to understand kind of what is beneath the top line. And that's a big issue, I think, for ESG, sustainable impact investing, however you describe it. And I know you and members of the WWF have really taken the initiative to help with this transparency. What can you tell us about transparency? How are organizations transforming, good word there, transforming themselves to provide more information to investors about the things that we're talking about?
Well, it's a great question. And it's something that, over the last 15, 20 years, we've seen a lot of advancements, right? So we've had what was the Carbon Disclosure Project, now CDP, because it covers much more forests, water, and some other things, where companies have been disclosing their emissions and their plans for transformation for years. That has evolved. We now have the task force on climate-related financial disclosures, another one on disclosing impacts on nature. So there's a proliferation of platforms for transparency. And now, of course, the SEC has its draft regulations, which went out for comment earlier this year, and we're expecting them to finalize those in the months ahead. And companies will have to have mandated disclosure, and that will add another layer of transparency. On the financial regulation initiative side, with WWF and other organizations, we also will be launching, have launched this website. It's called the SUSReg tool, Sustainable Regulations. And that will be a place where we will be tracking what central banks and other financial institutions are doing. And that's a way, where the NGO community holds the corporate community and governments responsible.
Sounds like there's a lot of work going into that to address some of these concerns. And look, it's iterative, it's ever evolving. Tim, my last question is about defined contribution plans. And look, I'm not going to ask you to be an ERISA expert here. That's not the purpose. You mentioned $4 trillion, I think, with pension funds. And they, by and large, from what I have read and seen, they're on board with meeting some of these initiatives that you're outlining and that were covered in Climate Week. But I want to talk a little bit about 401k plans or similar plans, 403b, 457, where the individual directs their investment. And again, not putting you on the spot, not expecting you to know ERISA, but what do we need to do for 401k plan or type plans to adopt ESG and sustainable investing investments? Because right now that adoption is very low. Is it just more education that needs to be done for not only the fiduciary, but also those individual investors?
Well, education is at the bottom of so much, right, around this issue. But we also know that education is not a panacea, right? This doesn't seem to be an issue where there's an information gap. And, when there is an information gap, that more information solves the problem. And so, one of the things is you need the option, and a lot of plans don't even have that option, right? But I think one of the fundamental problems is having a sustainable option in your 401k isn't going to get us there, right? We have to transform the entire system, and we have to do it rapidly. If we just keep divesting assets out of companies or that divestment goes somewhere. It's not like we're eradicating it from the system, right? So, you could end up with one institution that holds all of the, fossil fuel assets. And if they're still there, we haven't solved anything. So it's not just creating one option, but it's fundamentally transforming all of the options so that they are sustainable.
Yeah, and I know the Department of Labor, and there are a lot of what I would call bureaucracies or organizations maybe within the government, Department of Labor, SEC, and others that are really focused on this. So hopefully there will be more change, and as you suggest, quicker rather than later. Tim, we're going to have to leave it there. Again, we didn't do enough. I think we did a little bit of justice. We talked about it enough. For more information, people can certainly go to the WWF website. Tim, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Well, that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, then hey, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more and all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content, or visit our website, and of course, all of our streaming partners. We're back again tomorrow for BRN Weekly. We'll be taking a look back at some of our best segments and contributors for the week. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.